I thought I had everything, until I realized the one thing I wanted most, love, was the one thing people kept trying to fake. And the worst part? One man didn't just pretend to love me. He tried to take everything I had built, everything I was. But what he didn't know was that I had already learned how to survive loss. And this time, I wasn't going to lose. If you've ever trusted the wrong person, if you've ever been betrayed by someone who smiled in your face, then you already know how this story feels. So before we begin, take a second to like and subscribe, because stories like this don't just entertain, they remind you to never underestimate quiet strength. My name is Victoria. And if you saw me from the outside, you'd think I had the perfect life. Multiple properties. A successful business empire. Luxury cars. Travel whenever I want. Freedom most people only dream about. But none of that tells you what my nights feel like. None of it tells you what silence sounds like when it echoes through a house that's too big, too empty. Because the truth is, I didn't build this life out of ambition. I built it out of grief. My husband died 6 years ago. And when he did, it felt like someone had taken the center of my world and just erased it. No warning. No mercy. Just gone. At first, I couldn't function. I'd wake up and forget he was gone, and then remember all over again. Every single morning. It was like drowning, over and over. So I did the only thing I knew how to do. I worked. I buried myself in it. Meetings. Deals. Investments. Expansion. If I stayed busy enough, I didn't have to feel anything. And for a while, it worked. The money came in. The success followed. People started calling me inspiring, powerful, unstoppable. But what they didn't see was that I was just running. Running from the quiet. Running from the empty side of the bed. Running from the truth that no matter how much I built, I was still alone. And loneliness. It doesn't scream. It whispers. It sits with you at dinner when there's no one across the table. It lingers when you come home and no one's there to ask how your day was. It waits in the silence after a long drive, when you realize there's no one to call. That was my life. And I had made peace with it. Or at least, I thought I had. Until him. I met Daniel at a charity event. He wasn't the loudest person in the room. He didn't try too hard. Didn't hover around the wealthy guests like most people did. In fact, he barely noticed me at first. And that alone caught my attention. He spoke calmly. Confident, but not arrogant. There was something about him that felt grounded. Safe. We ended up talking near the balcony, away from the noise. "What do you do?" he asked. I smiled lightly. "A little bit of everything." He chuckled. "That sounds like a lot of responsibility." "It is," I said. "But it keeps me busy." He looked at me for a moment longer than usual. Busy doesn't always mean fulfilled. That sentence. It stayed with me. Because he said it like he understood. Like he saw something in me that others didn't. And for the first time in years, I felt seen. We started talking more after that night. Then meeting. Coffee turned into dinners. Dinners turned into long walks. Conversations turned into something deeper. He never asked about my money. Never commented on my lifestyle. He listened. Really listened. And slowly, I let my guard down. I told him about my husband. About the loneliness. About how success had filled my life, but not my heart. And he didn't try to fix it. He just sat with me in it. "You don't have to be strong all the time," he told me once. That night, I cried for the first time in years. And he held me. Not like someone who wanted something, but like someone who cared. Or at least, That's what I believed. Months passed. And for the first time since my husband died, I wasn't just surviving. I was living again. We traveled together. Laughed. Shared quiet moments that didn't feel empty anymore. My house didn't feel so silent. My days didn't feel so heavy. And I started thinking. Maybe this is it. Maybe this is the man I've been waiting for. Someone who saw me. Not my wealth. Not my success. Me. So when he told me he loved me, I believed him. But looking back now, there were signs. Small ones. Easy to ignore. He'd ask subtle questions about my business. How do you manage all your properties? Do you handle finances yourself? Do you trust your team completely? At the time, it felt like curiosity. Interest. Now I know. It was something else. The first crack appeared 6 months in. We were having dinner at home. I had just closed a major deal, one that would expand my company internationally. I was excited. But when I told him, his reaction wasn't what I expected. "That's big," he said slowly. I smiled. "It is. It's something I've been working toward for years." He nodded, but something in his expression shifted. "Does that mean you'll be even busier now?" There was something underneath that question. Something I couldn't quite place. "I'll manage," I said. "I always do." He leaned back slightly. "I just don't want to feel like I'm competing with your work." That caught me off guard. "You're not competing," I said gently. "You're part of my life." He didn't respond right away. And for the first time, there was tension. Subtle. But real. After that, things started to change. Not all at once. Slowly. Quietly. He became more involved. More interested in my schedules. My meetings. My decisions. At first, I thought it was because he cared. Because he wanted to support me. But then, he started making suggestions. "You should trust fewer people. You're too generous with your staff. You could make more profit if you restructured things." It wasn't aggressive. It was persuasive. Calculated. And little by little, he started inserting himself into parts of my life I had always controlled. The night everything shifted was the night I overheard a phone call. He was in the other room. Didn't know I was home yet. His voice was different. Sharper. Colder. "I'm close," he said. A pause. "No, she trusts me." Another pause. "I just need a little more time." My stomach dropped. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. "She has no idea," he added quietly. Silence. Then a low chuckle. "I told you, this is going to work." In that moment, everything inside me went cold. Not broken. Not shattered. Cold. Because I had felt this before. That exact moment when reality shifts. And you realize the person you trusted was never who they said they were. I stepped back quietly before he could see me. My heart was racing. But my mind? It was clear. Too clear. Because suddenly, everything made sense. The questions. The interest. The timing. The way he had entered my life so perfectly. So seamlessly. It wasn't luck. It wasn't fate. It was planned. That night, I didn't confront him. I didn't cry. I didn't ask questions. I did something much more dangerous. I smiled. Acted normal. Played my role perfectly. Because if there's one thing grief had taught me, it's how to endure pain without showing it. And if there's one thing success had taught me, it's how to think 5 steps ahead. So I sat across from him at dinner. Watched him laugh. Watched him pretend. And inside, I made a decision. If he thought I was just another lonely widow, someone easy to manipulate, someone blinded by love, then he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. Because this time, I wasn't the one being played. He thought he was getting closer to taking everything from me. What he didn't know was that I had already started planning how to take everything from him. That night, I didn't sleep. Not even for a minute. I lay in bed beside him, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rhythm of his breathing like it was a lie I could physically hear. Slow. Calm. Peaceful. As if he hadn't just revealed that everything between us was a performance. As if I wasn't lying inches away from a stranger. My chest felt tight, but not from sadness. From restraint. Because every instinct in me wanted to turn, shake him awake, and demand the truth. But I didn't. I couldn't. Not yet. Because the moment I confronted him, the game would end. And I needed it to continue. By morning, I had already decided who I was going to be. Not the woman who got betrayed. Not the widow who got used. But the woman who watches. Waits. And wins. Good morning, he said casually, walking into the kitchen like nothing had changed. I turned from the counter, coffee in hand, and smiled. Morning. My voice didn't shake. My hands didn't tremble. Years of controlling my emotions in boardrooms had trained me for moments like this. You're up early, he added. Couldn't sleep, I said lightly. He stepped closer, brushing a kiss against my temple. And for a split second, my body froze. Because now I knew what that touch meant. It wasn't affection. It was strategy. From that day on, I started paying attention. Not just to what he said, but to what he avoided. He began asking more direct questions. Have you ever thought about consolidating your accounts? Do you keep everything under your name? Do you have a will set up? Before, those questions would have felt like concern. Now, they felt like a blueprint. And the more I listened, the more I realized something terrifying. This wasn't spontaneous. This wasn't opportunistic. This was planned. Carefully. Patiently. And I wasn't the first step. I was the end goal. But here's the thing he didn't understand about me. I don't panic under pressure. I analyze. So instead of pulling away, I leaned in. I became softer. More open. More trusting. At least, that's what he saw. I've been thinking, I told him one evening as we sat on the couch. He looked at me, curious. About what? About the future. His eyes flickered, just for a second. Yeah? I nodded slowly. I don't want to do everything alone anymore. That was the first hook. And he took it. What do you mean? He asked, his tone carefully neutral. I mean, I hesitated, like I was unsure. I've built all of this, but what's the point if I don't share it with someone I trust? There it was. The word he wanted to hear. Trust. I watched his reaction closely. He leaned forward slightly. You can trust me, Victoria. I held his gaze. I know. And that was the moment he believed he had won. But the truth? That was the moment I took control. Still, playing this role wasn't easy. Because no matter how strong I wasn't immune. There were moments, small, quiet moments, where the illusion almost pulled me back in. When he laughed at something I said. When he held my hand absent-mindedly. When he looked at me like I mattered. And for a split second, I wanted to believe it was real. That maybe I had misunderstood. That maybe I had overreacted. But then, I'd remember his voice on that phone. I'm close. She trusts me. And just like that, the illusion shattered again. The hardest part wasn't pretending. It was staying patient. Because I didn't just want to expose him. I wanted to understand everything. Who he was working with. What his plan was. How far he was willing to go. Because revenge without clarity is just emotion. And I needed precision. So I started digging. Quietly. Carefully. The first thing I did was hire a private investigator. Not through my usual contacts. I used a separate channel. Paid in cash. No paper trail. His name was Marcus. Efficient. Discreet. The kind of man who asked the right questions and didn't waste time talking. I need everything on him, I said during our first meeting. Background. Finances. Connections. Patterns. I want to know who he really is. Marcus nodded once. How deep do you want me to go? I met his eyes. As deep as it takes. Days passed. Then a week. Then 2. And during that time, I kept playing my role. I started involving Daniel more. Small things at first. Letting him sit in on casual business conversations. Asking his opinion on minor decisions. Making him feel included. Valued. Important. And he responded exactly how I expected. He leaned in. Got comfortable. Started acting like he belonged. But with comfort comes carelessness. One night, we were at dinner with a few of my associates. Daniel was quieter than usual, observing more than speaking. But I noticed something. Every time someone mentioned assets, investments, expansion, his attention sharpened. Like a predator tracking movement. Later that night, as we drove home, he finally spoke. You've built something incredible, he said. I smiled faintly. It took time. And trust, he added. I glanced at him. What do you mean? He shrugged casually. You can't get this far without trusting the right people. There it was again. Trust. Always trust. I leaned back in my seat, looking out the window. And what happens when you trust the wrong person? I asked quietly. There was a pause. Just a second. But I felt it. You won't, he said. I turned to him slowly. How do you know? He smiled. Because I won't let you. That answer. It sent a chill down my spine. Not because it was reassuring. But because it sounded like ownership. Like control. A few days later. Marcus called. I have something, he said. His tone was different. More serious. I think you should see this in person. When I sat down across from him, I already knew. Whatever he was about to say was going to confirm everything. Maybe worse. He slid a folder across the table. His name isn't Daniel Carter, he said. My fingers stilled. What? Not legally, Marcus continued. He's used that name before, but it's not his real identity. My chest tightened. Then who is he? Marcus opened the file. His real name is Daniel Hayes. I stared at the photo. Same face. Same eyes. Different truth. He's done this before, Marcus added. My heart dropped, but my expression didn't change. What do you mean? He targets wealthy women. Builds relationships. Gains trust. Then manipulates access to finances, assets, sometimes even legal control. My hands clenched under the table. How many? Marcus hesitated. 3 confirmed. A cold silence filled the room. And after? I asked quietly. They lost everything. Everything. The word echoed in my mind like a warning. Or maybe a challenge. Why hasn't he been caught? I asked. Marcus leaned back slightly. Because he's careful. He doesn't rush. He doesn't leave obvious traces. And by the time they realize what's happening, it's too late, I finished. Marcus nodded. I closed the folder slowly. Every emotion I should have felt, anger, fear, betrayal, was there. But underneath all of it was something stronger. Something sharper. Clarity. Because now I wasn't guessing anymore. I knew exactly who I was dealing with. A man who thought he was smarter than everyone else. A man who believed patience made him untouchable. A man who had done this before. And gotten away with it. I looked up at Marcus. Can you prove it? He met my gaze. Not yet. I nodded once. Then we're going to give him the chance to try it again. Marcus frowned slightly. You're going to let him continue? I leaned forward. Yes. Because now, this wasn't just about me. This was about every woman he had already destroyed. Every life he had walked into. And emptied. And I wasn't going to be his next victim. I was going to be his last mistake. That night, I went home. He was waiting. Smiling. Relaxed. Like everything was exactly as he planned. How was your day? He asked. I set my bag down slowly. Productive. I walked over and sat beside him. Close enough that he couldn't see the distance I had already created. I've been thinking more about what we talked about, I said softly. His attention sharpened instantly. Yeah? I nodded. I want you more involved. There it was. The second hook. His eyes lit up, just slightly. Controlled. But I saw it. What kind of involvement? He asked. I smiled. The kind that requires trust. And just like that, I watched him step deeper into the trap. Because what he didn't realize was that every move he made from this point forward was exactly where I wanted him to be. He thought he was getting access to my world. My money. My life. But what he didn't know was that I had already started building the perfect stage for his downfall. From that moment on, everything became intentional. Every word I said. Every smile I gave. Every decision I appeared to make was carefully designed. Because now, I wasn't reacting anymore. I was directing. The first rule of taking someone down is letting them believe they're still in control. And Daniel? He was already convinced. I've been thinking about what you said, I told him one morning, sliding a cup of coffee across the counter. He looked up, interested. About what? About not doing everything alone. That line again. Soft. Vulnerable. Exactly how he liked it. I trust you, I added quietly. And there it was again, that flicker in his eyes. Greed, disguised as reassurance. What do you need from me? He asked. I pretended to hesitate. Maybe, just start small, I said. Sit in on some meetings. Help me review things. I want your perspective. He nodded immediately. Of course. Too fast. Too eager. And that's how I knew. He was already imagining the endgame. But what he didn't know was that I had already built mine. The next step was infrastructure. Because revenge isn't about emotion. It's about execution. I contacted my legal team first. Not all of them. Just one. Someone I had trusted for years, Evelyn. Sharp. Quiet. Uncompromising. If there was anyone who could help me build something airtight, it was her. We met late in the evening at her office. No assistants. No interruptions. Just the two of us. You look different, she said as soon as I sat down. I gave a faint smile. I feel different. She didn't ask unnecessary questions. What's going on? I leaned forward slightly. I need to restructure everything. Her brow furrowed. Everything? Assets. Accounts. Ownership structures. Access permissions. She studied me carefully. This isn't about business, is it? I held her gaze. No. A pause. Then. Are you in danger? That question. It lingered. I thought about it. About Daniel. About his lies. About what he had done to other women. And then I answered honestly. Not if I do this right. Evelyn didn't push further. She just nodded once. Tell me what you need. What I needed was control. Total control. Over the next 2 weeks, we moved everything. Not in a way that would raise suspicion. Subtle shifts. Layered protections. Silent barriers. Ownership transferred into legal entities he couldn't access. Accounts restructured with dual authorization. Emergency clauses added. Digital permissions tightened. Everything looked the same from the outside. But internally, it was untouchable. Even if someone had full access, Evelyn explained, they wouldn't be able to move anything without triggering alerts. I nodded. Good. Who is this for? She asked quietly. I stood up, gathering my things. Someone who thinks he's smarter than me. That was step 1. Step 2 was temptation. Because if I wanted Daniel to reveal everything, I had to give him a reason to try. So I started planting ideas. Carefully. Subtly. Like seeds. I've been overwhelmed lately, I said one evening, resting my head against his shoulder. With what? He asked, immediately attentive. Managing everything alone. He wrapped an arm around me. You don't have to. I exhaled softly. I know. I just don't know how to let go of control. That was the line. The exact line he needed to hear. Maybe you don't have to let go completely, he said. Just, share it. I looked up at him. You really think that's a good idea? He nodded, his voice calm. It's the only way to build something real together. Together. That word almost made me laugh. But I didn't. Instead, I smiled. Okay, I whispered. And just like that, he stepped deeper into the illusion. Over the next few days, I gave him more. Access to meetings. Insight into decisions. Fragments of information that felt significant. But weren't. Because everything he saw was curated. But I wasn't the only one watching. Marcus was still digging. Following leads. Tracking connections. And what he found next changed everything. They're still in contact, he told me during our next meeting. My eyes narrowed. Who? Daniel and one of his previous associates. Associate? I repeated. Marcus nodded. A woman. Name's Carla. Something about that name felt heavy. What's her role? He slid another file across the table. She was involved in one of his previous cases. Helped him gain access. Played the emotional angle. My stomach turned. So they work together? Yes. And now? They've been communicating again. Recently. A slow realization settled in. This wasn't just Daniel. This was a system. A pattern. A coordinated effort. Can you track their conversations? I asked. Not directly, Marcus said. But I can get close. I leaned back, thinking. Then slowly. A plan began to form. Clear. Precise. Unavoidable. Then we give them something worth talking about, I said. That night, I took the next step. Daniel, I said, sitting across from him at dinner. He looked up. I've made a decision. His attention sharpened instantly. What kind of decision? I took a breath. I want to restructure part of my assets. There it was. The bait. He didn't react immediately. But I saw it. That flicker again. Carefully controlled excitement. What do you mean? He asked. I want to simplify things, I continued. Make it easier to manage. Maybe consolidate certain accounts, bring everything under a more unified structure. He leaned forward slightly. That's a big move. I know, I said softly. That's why I want your help. Silence. Just for a moment. But it was enough. Enough for me to see exactly what was happening behind his eyes. Calculations. Opportunities. Endgames. You trust me with that? He asked. I met his gaze. I do. That night. He stayed up later than usual. On his phone. Quiet. Focused. And somewhere. I knew. He wasn't talking to me. The next morning, Marcus confirmed it. He contacted her, he said. My lips curved slightly. Good. Because now. They were moving. And when people move, they make mistakes. The final piece of the plan was the stage. I needed a moment. A situation where everything would come together. Where he would act. Where he would expose himself. Completely. So I created it. A fake opportunity. A high-value transfer. A controlled environment. Every detail planned. Every outcome anticipated. And then. I told him. There's something big coming up, I said casually over breakfast. He looked up immediately. How big? I smiled faintly. Big enough that I can't handle it alone. That was the moment. The final hook. The one he couldn't resist. Because now. He wasn't just interested. He was invested. And the deeper he got, the harder he would fall. That night. As I lay in bed beside him again. I listened to his breathing. The same calm rhythm. The same false peace. But this time. I wasn't the one losing sleep. Because for the first time since I heard that phone call. I wasn't reacting to his game. I had become the game. He thought the opportunity was finally here. The moment he could take everything. But what he didn't know was that every step he was about to take was already planned. The day finally came. And everything about it felt normal. That was the most important part. No tension. No drama. No visible signs that anything was about to unfold. Just another day. Another opportunity. Another step in what Daniel believed was his plan. I woke up early. Not because I was nervous. But because I was ready. For the first time in weeks. I felt calm. Grounded. Certain. Because every variable had been accounted for. Every risk measured. Every outcome anticipated. Daniel was already awake when I walked into the kitchen. Dressed. Alert. Focused. He looked like a man preparing for something important. And in his mind. He was. Big day? He asked, watching me pour coffee. I smiled faintly. You could say that. He stepped closer. You sure you want me involved in this? There it was again. That performance. That careful mask of hesitation. As if he needed reassurance. As if he wasn't already fully committed. I turned to face him. I wouldn't have asked if I wasn't sure. Our eyes met. And for a brief moment, there was silence. Heavy. Charged. Because beneath everything, there was truth. He thought I trusted him. And I knew exactly who he was. "All right," he said finally. "Let's do this." The setup was simple. Or at least, it looked simple. A high-value asset transfer. One that required authorization, coordination, and precise timing. The kind of transaction that would give someone access. If they knew where to look. If they knew what to do. We arrived at the office just before noon. Everything was already in motion. My team, carefully selected, fully briefed, played their roles perfectly. No one questioned anything. No one hesitated. Because to them, this was just business. But behind the scenes, every system was watching. Every action logged. Every move tracked in real time. I guided Daniel through the process. Step by step. Explaining just enough to make it believable. Just enough to make it feel real. "You'll need to confirm this here," I said, gesturing to the screen. He leaned in. Focused. Engaged. Exactly where I wanted him. "This gives access to the transfer sequence," I added. "Only temporarily." That word mattered. Temporarily. Because it gave him urgency. He nodded slowly. "I understand." But I could see it. That flicker again. That quiet calculation. Because now, he believed the door was open. The rest of the day moved smoothly. Meetings. Calls. Final confirmations. All leading to one moment. One opportunity. And I knew. He wouldn't wait. That evening, I told him I had to step out. "Just for a bit," I said casually. "Everything's set. Nothing should change." He nodded. Too easily. "I'll stay here," he said. "Make sure everything runs smoothly." Of course you will, I thought. I left the building. But I didn't go far. From a secured location nearby, I watched. Marcus was beside me. Silent. Focused. Monitoring everything. "Any movement?" I asked. "Not yet," he replied. Minutes passed. Then, there it was. "He's accessing the system," Marcus said. My eyes locked onto the screen. "Show me." And there he was. Daniel. Sitting exactly where I left him. Calm. Confident. Completely unaware. "He's bypassing the standard sequence," Marcus added. "Trying to redirect access." I exhaled slowly. There it is. Every move he made was exactly what we expected. "He's initiating a transfer," Marcus said. "To where?" I asked. He paused. "Then, a secondary account." I nodded. "Carla." Marcus glanced at me. "Looks like it." Of course it was. Daniel moved quickly. Efficiently. Like someone who had done this before. But what he didn't know was that nothing he was accessing was real. Every account he touched. Every number he saw. Every confirmation he believed was part of the system we built. A mirror. A controlled illusion. "He thinks it's working," Marcus said quietly. I watched Daniel lean back slightly. Satisfied. Relieved. And then, everything stopped. The screen froze. The system locked. And within seconds, the room filled with people. Security. Legal. Authorities. Daniel stood up abruptly. Confused. "What's going on?" he demanded. I stepped into the room. Slowly. Calmly. His eyes met mine. And in that moment, everything changed. Because the mask? It slipped. "Victoria," he said, his voice uncertain. I walked closer. Not rushed. Not emotional. Just certain. "It's over," I said quietly. His expression shifted. Confusion turned to realization. And then panic. "What is this?" he snapped. "You set me up?" I tilted my head slightly. "No," I said. "I gave you exactly what you were looking for." Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. "You trusted me," he said, almost desperate now. I met his gaze. "No," I replied calmly. "I understood you." The room felt smaller. Tighter. Because now there was nowhere for him to go. Marcus stepped forward, placing the file on the table. Evidence. Everything. His identity. His past. His pattern. "You've done this before," I continued. "To other women." His jaw tightened. "You don't know what you're talking about." I smiled faintly. "That's the thing about truth." I leaned in slightly. "It doesn't need your permission." The authorities stepped in. And for the first time, Daniel didn't fight. Because he knew. As they took him away, he looked back at me. One last time. Not with anger. Not with regret. But with something else. Shock. Because for the first time, he had been outplayed. And he never saw it coming. The fallout. The story spread quickly. Not publicly. Not in headlines. But in the circles that mattered. People talked. Quietly. Carefully. About the man who thought he could manipulate his way into everything. And lost it all instead. And about the woman. Who let him try. I didn't celebrate. I didn't feel triumph the way people imagine. Because revenge isn't loud. It's quiet. It's the moment you sit alone. And realize something has shifted. That the weight you were carrying is gone. Not because someone else fell. But because you stood. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something different. Not loneliness. Peace. I still come home to a quiet house. Still sit at the same table. Still live the same life. But something inside me changed. Because now I know. I don't need someone to complete my life. I need someone who adds to it. And I'm no longer afraid of waiting. Because I would rather be alone than ever be deceived again. And if love comes again, it won't be because I needed it. It will be because it was real. If this story made you feel something, if you've ever been underestimated, used, or betrayed, remember this. The strongest people aren't the ones who never get hurt. They're the ones who learn, adapt, and rise anyway. So subscribe for more stories like this. Because sometimes, the best revenge is simply refusing to lose.